My name is David Williams, and I am one of the co-founders of the Youth Development Agency. We are an international education company that spans quite a wide range. We have three key themes that we kind of concentrate on. So, experiential learning practice. So that could be anything from delivering Socratic debate in an amphitheatre in Cyprus, all the way through to walking up the mountains in Oman. It really is quite broad. The key piece of that is what learning can we take away for young people. We then have a second strand, which is around education technology. So we're very, very keen on looking at how the education in the broadest sense can be brought to not just young people actually. So learning for life is a very big piece of the educational landscape now. Lifelong learning, because of the people getting older and working for longer, there's a step change there. We tend to focus on the under 30s. That's kind of our key ballpark. So anywhere from about 11 through to 30 in programs that meet those needs. And educational technology, because of the way that we are able to now go worldwide, so we can put platforms in schools and into the hands of people, in India, in Africa, in different countries, Africa, like all over the shop. And so we're really keen on seeing what that can do to augment the learning process. And then the third stream is consulting. So we work with predominantly international schools and universities on how they recruit students, so they're offering. So, and because the HE sector is really poignant, because today actually there's a article published on 3 of the top Russell Group universities having a real big downturn in the amount of students that they are taking in. So Southampton was down by 29%, Manchester was down, I can't remember what the third one was now, but 3 Russell Group universities. And so young people are actually become much more savvy. I think we left kind of like the Blair years and it being everyone's going to university, and it was just the thing you did. Within a certain sector of society, that is what you did, that was your pathway, and you didn't really get, honestly, you didn't get a choice, but there wasn't a lot of other options that were seen as viable things for you to do. You went to university, you got your job, and then whatever you did, you did. And over, I would say, the last decade, what we've seen is young people become much more savvy about their options, and that is to do with, some of it's to do with the democratization of information, democratization of access. So I do talks at schools and universities, and one of the things that I raise is this these young people on YouTube, these YouTubers, or these. I mean, there's been a big debate about what influencers are on Instagram, but you could see that these young people were really engaged in a platform that allowed them to actually have a career. I think one of the greatest examples is a young guy in mid Wales who teaches gardening, and his demographic is actually older people using YouTube, which would have been seen as a really millennial kind of platform, to teach something that's been going on for generations. I think it's just fantastic. And so young people are seeing that actually that university education, what are they going to get for it? And that was correlated obviously with like the rise in tuition fees and the costs of actually going to university and the debt associated with that. And so part of what we do is look at the offering of the university, and we talk about what students you want to attract. And we do this with international schools as well. And I truly believe if you get the right university, the right institution, and the right person, magic happens. And that doesn't matter whether it's like a classic education establishment like a red brick university or a school or whatever it is. If you get those two pieces right, that is magic, and amazing things happen. And so I feel so lucky. I love what I do. I get to meet all these amazing people. We have these testimonials that come through, and we are able to change lives in lots of different ways, and we're able to work with, in the consulting work with institutions to get them to see things differently. So it's not just about, okay, you've gone out and you've brought this student who's a great fit for your type of institution, then what do you do to support them? How do you keep them? How do you nurture them? How do you then send them out into the world to be massive advocates for what you do and who you are? And I think if we can do that properly, we'll see a sea change in the way in which some of the HE sector looks to recruit students, because they're no longer seen as, I mean, the lifting of the cap is one thing, but they're not just seen as this kind of, yeah, I'll be honest, bread and butter of a university. I mean, the research universities do get money from research grants, but undergrads, and particularly overseas undergrads, pay massive fees in order to help the sector. And we can't see them as cash cows anymore. We have to see it as a service. And I think some universities are slowly waking up to this sense that actually we need to provide something better than 4 lectures a week and a couple of seminars. It's not good enough. And we can do so much better. And I think when we get that right, then we're going to have absolutely top class graduates able to compete in the wider world, because that's what it's a global economy. If, you know, I said earlier about the democratization of information and access to each other, dissemination of information, you are a global citizen. You can't hide. You are no longer someone who lives in, you know, a small town in South Wales. By virtue of everything that's happening, you are a citizen of the globe, whether you like it or not. And we can argue lots of different, you know, pieces around that and what people see as identity. But your future is global, and we need to be supporting young people to deal with that and not be shying away from it. Yes. Okay, so I am a complete accidental entrepreneur. And when I talk about that traditional route, that was my route. So how did it all come about? It started off, I say, a long time ago. I did a pharmacology biochemistry degree, which is about as far away from what, you know, people would think now. And then I did what everyone did in 2004, and I went and worked for an investment firm. And I moved overseas, and very, very quickly, and I was very, very fortunate actually. I was fortunate because I had really good supportive family who, when I said I moved into Cyprus because there's a job in the Middle East that I want to go to, they went, yeah, okay, crack on. And I think they were quite brave in doing that, and quite very, very supportive. And then when I went to Cyprus, and I ended up recognising that actually I hated it. I hated the job I was doing. It was just full of arseholes. It really was. It was not a nice place to be. It was working with. It was coming off the dot-com bubble. There was a lot of money in the City of London. They were looking for investment vehicles. There was a lot of young men with a lot of money who essentially wanted girls. You know, it was that scene. It was girls, drugs, money, cars, and it was horrid. I was too naive, I think, in my fairly sheltered upbringing. In that, you know, I went to local comp, you know, but very, very kind of traditional family, so, you know, and went to a university that was quite supportive. Had a good group of friends, played rugby, wasn't part of that kind of scene, and then to be thrust into this world where I didn't feel that there was a lot of soul, and very quickly became disenfranchised and realised I didn't want to do that. But actually I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I talk about this often. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 18, really. I thought I did. Didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 22, 25. You fall into lots of things, and you develop interests, and the one thing I always say to young people is, if you find something you love, that's what you do. And it doesn't matter if that changes either. You know, it doesn't. You pursue what you really love right now, and you can't go far wrong. So I quit my job, and again, naivety, and this may be a recurring theme. I phoned them up on the Monday, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I had an apartment, I had a car, I had a laptop, a phone, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay, they're going to give me a month, standard kind of like, you know, hand my resignation in. I got a phone call back, and they pretty much say this to someone on a plane, and I had a week, and I ended up pretty much actually, I slept on friends' sofas, I did all that kind of stuff, 2,500 miles away from home. Part of it, I am very stubborn. My wife, I tried to tell my wife once that I wasn't stubborn, and she'd laugh for about 45 minutes. I am stubborn, and maybe you can call it tenacity. You can use whatever, however you want to phrase it. Having your own business, you need to be stubborn because you did a lot of knocks. So I didn't want to go home, and I had a little bit of money, and I thought, right, what am I going to do? And I travelled. I went and travelled the Middle East. I learned to speak Turkish. I had some amazing experiences, and I came back to Cyprus where I was living, and this was late August, and I was going to spend a few weeks with friends, and I was going to head back to the UK and work out what the hell I was going to do. So we were going down to a local beach, and I saw a sign, and it said Mediterranean and green turtles here, and I thought that's interesting. So I wandered up, and there was a girl who was running the project, and she said, "Oh, we're you here? Here to have a look at the project?" I said, "Yeah, it's really interesting." And she said, "I'm a bit stressed because one of the people who was supposed to come out for our researchers hasn't turned up, and we're like a volunteer short. And well, what do you want to do? What do you need them to do?" And she said, "Oh, we do biopsying of the carapace, the shell of the turtle, so that we can track the DNA of all the different turtles that are nesting here." Amazing. I'm like, I'm in, I'll do that. And so I spent like the best part of the rest of the summer living on a beach, doing this research into green and Mediterranean loggerhead turtles. And I've got pictures of me with a turtle in my hand. And we release them into the water because they get predated by dogs. And part of the volunteer package was that we'd have local schools and tourists come, and we'd talk about ecology and marine ecology. And I've done a lot of diving, and I fell in love with it. It's like telling the best story, because you bring someone along with you, and when you bring someone along and they buy into the reasons why you're doing something, you can change the world. That is the fundamental piece of it. And seeing some of these children realizing why, when they go on a Sunday and have barbecues with their family and on the beach they just leave everything, why that was a real detriment to not just the ecology of the water, and the turtles and the rest of the species, but how that impacts on them, and that whole thing about how we are connected with our environments, way before we've talked about plastics now and things. And a head teacher took me aside. I'd done one of these talks, and the head teacher took me aside and said, "Oh, so what you do?" I kind of laughed and went, "I don't really know." And he said, "Oh, you're good." He said, "You're really good at this." And he said, "We've got a couple of students who need some extra tutoring. Would you be interested in me speaking to the parents about doing that?" And so I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." So I'm not flying home anymore. I'm living on this beautiful island. And that's what I did. And then I got offered a job teaching at the school, and they put me through my teaching qualifications. And then I took another job somewhere else, and I was then head of year 7. I was doing all the transition work. I absolutely loved to teach it. I will always be in education. Wherever I end up in 50 years' time, I'll always end up doing this, because this is what I love. And so I was doing that, and I was doing quite a lot of work with disadvantaged communities, and we got really interested in the development side of things. And so I thought, I'm going to go home, I'm going to do a master's. So I came back to Cardiff to do my master's, and as we all do, I moved back with my parents. And again, you've got to be humble sometimes, and I was really lucky. I was fortunate that they didn't mind taking their 26-year-old son into back home. I did get out quite quickly, but I had that safety net, which was really valuable. Came back, and I had to get a job as well. And the job I got, I ended up 4 weeks later, I ended up meeting this girl who is now my wife. And she spoiled all my plans. I was going to go away traveling again and all the rest of it. And she helped ground me in a lot of ways, and actually gave me lots of opportunities here. And so I pursued a lot of work within the voluntary sector. And at the same time, I then wrote programs for international NGOs. I worked in West Africa, I worked in India, delivered programs on gender equality. All the time coming back to Cardiff as a base, going out and coming back. Worked for a big global youth charity. I ended up managing the provision across Europe and Eurasia. But in the back of my head, it was always, I think I'm a problem solver. I like to solve problems. I like to see how I can help. And particularly within the voluntary sector at the time, you were always funded like you were restricted by funding. Like you'd have a funding pot of money, and you could do this. And it didn't matter that the fund was for 5 years, and in 5 years' time, that might not fit. That's what you're funded for. That's what you're doing. And I fundamentally thought that was wrong. I was like, I really did think that we weren't able to help as many people as we could. And as all really good ideas start, I met a friend who's now my business partner, and we had been batting different ideas about. And I said, look, if we've got all this knowledge between us, we know how to do these types of things. If we were doing them on a commercial basis, we could then have a fund that we could use to deliver the practice that we think is valuable in the places that we think is valuable. And it was decided over a beer in Limassol in Cyprus, over like beach in the foreground. Yeah, that's a great idea. So that takes us right up to about 3 years ago. And I remember doing it and thinking, I've never owned a company before. I don't know what that entails. But I know it's the right thing to do. And so I did what every good millennial does. I went onto Google, how do you set a company up? Great, did that. So registered the company. I've now got a company, now I'm a director, great. What the hell do I do next? And I think, you waste money, don't you? So you do the whole, we've got to get the branding right, we've got to get this right, and we didn't really have anything else at that time. We had a few schools who wanted to work with us, we knew that, but we didn't have anything else really. And so we got our branding, we did all that kind of stuff. And then a good friend of mine, Georgina, we were having coffee. We used to meet up and have coffee quite regularly. And she said, you've got to go see what they're doing up in Caerphilly. Now, I'm a Cardiff boy. Very rarely go to Caerphilly. Actually, I think it was the first time I'd actually been to Caerphilly in a long time, when I went and met Gareth, met you. I can remember it was like way before ICE is now looking like it looks, and we sat and had a coffee out the back. And I can remember kind of telling you what we were doing and like the vision that I had. But it's like a picture. Like you've painted this picture of what you think the world should look like, and you're trying to do something about it. And that's the most interesting piece for me. Is there are too many people who paint pictures and don't do anything about it. They're happy to talk to you ad infinitum about it. I think Piano Man by Billy Joel. Right, this is going to be a really random music reference. He talks about that old man at the end of the bar, that guy who didn't pursue his dreams. That's where I feel people kind of, there's so much truth in that. The person who sits at the end of the bar talks about all the dreams, all the things they could have done. They never did them. We paint these pictures and we don't actually go out and do anything about them. And so, again, I met you, and then there was an opportunity at ICE, so I took that. And if I'm perfectly honest, probably didn't take advantage of it enough, because I didn't know what I was taking advantage of. I didn't know what I needed to do, and I always go back to this, I'm accidental entrepreneur, because I have stumbled my way all the time. It's like going, right, what do you need? What do you do about this? What do you do about that? But the problem solving, the stubborn, pig-headed. I will figure this out at 3 a.m. I don't give a shit if it takes me till 4. I will stay up and I will figure it out. Because you have to. When it's on your shoulders, you have to. And I really like that. And I was employed by the NGO. I'd actually taken some sick time. I was off sick for a while. And decided that this September I was going to go back or I was going to do this. And it wasn't that hard a decision. When I look back on it, I mean, I remember I was in floods of tears. I'm quite emotional. I was in floods of tears the day I left, and I can distinctly remember. So I don't do anything by halves. We bought a house to completely renovate. We had one son, and very quickly Sal got pregnant again. Not her fault, obviously. And we were living with my parents. So we were living with my parents, we set up a company, we had one under 3, under 2, and we had another one on the way. And I remember I was lying in bed on the Sunday before my new job started. And I remember turning over to Sally, my wife, and I said, I'm scared. I'm really scared. I'm scared what happens if everything falls apart. And she's great, my wife, very pragmatic. And she said, then you'll do something else. And I think it's so true, we get ourselves all worked up. And a lot in life is like that. Okay, that didn't work, let's do something else. Very, very rarely is it so catastrophic that you can't do anything about it. So that took us up, as I say, to the start of really me having a company. And I look at myself going, really? That guy? Because I just do what I like. No, that's a lie. I do what I love. I absolutely do what I love. Every day. And don't get me wrong, some of it's completely shit. I really, really hate some of it. Some of it just drives you nuts. I mean, I'm really crap at paperwork. I hate paperwork. Hate it. It's always the last thing that gets done. Much happier being out there doing things. And so then over the last 3 years, we have grown and grown and grown. So we were in one country. We're now running projects